Good evening, listeners. My name is Amy Shannon, and this is New York Echoes and Whispers, Histories, Mysteries, and Voices. Every person has a story, and behind every story is at least one person. Together, we'll explore the past of New York State along with its communities. I want to thank you for joining me. This is the pilot episode of this podcast. I do have a separate podcast called Amy's Bookshelf Reviews Podcast, and that is mainly for interviewing and talking about literature, books, and anything, and doing interviews with authors around the world, and things like that. I had a segment on there for history, but then I realized I wanted to expand more on history because it's not always what's written in the history books, especially those in schools. Um, I realized that there's only a highlight of our in the United States, in New York State, because you have a limited time to teach children history, and textbooks can be boring and they can be old, outdated, and a lot of times there's incorrect information. But it at the time that the text was written, it was thought to be true. I have done a lot of research. I write articles for the Saratoga County Historical Society's Roundtable. I've published two nonfiction local history books um, about Ballstown. Ballstown, the first one was for all people in all the pioneers and settlers in Ballstown in general, and how it came to be what it is. And then my book I just recently released in April, April 6th, was Reminiscences of Ballstown. And that is, it focuses on the women and their families, and also the status of various people depending on um, whether they were a farmer or pioneer, a clergyman, things like that, industrialist. And I discovered that a lot of women, they made history, but their names were never known. They made history just by um, raising their families, taking care of everything, including their husbands. Um, and I want to make sure that whatever I put out is accurate. I truly, I just love history, global history, world history, North American history, New York, and obviously I love, love, love. I love the um, history itself, especially about the people. And I dive into my family history, and I have several branches on each side of my family, and I do that as well. And I really enjoy um, just doing that. Um, and that's why I wanted to start doing this. I'm going to do it at least um, the first and third Saturday of the month at 7 p.m. And talk about, you know, history, and because its importance. And I find there's a lot of information that you can explore, but there's a lot of information that you literally have to dig for and find. And it's not just about doing searches on the internet, it's about reading old books and going to libraries, or finding people who have information, or using them as resources, because people are a resource. And maybe if they don't know the answer, they might be able to help you find where to go to find your answers. And if when you come across something and you start questioning things, then you really know that you are just deep diving into the information. So, for this podcast, this my pilot episode, um, I sorry, I'm grabbing my coffee. um, I want to dedicate this pilot episode um, in the memory of my father. Um, my father lost his battle with dementia um, on April 1st of 2026. Um, he was a literal genius. He had he was in a, he was hit by a car when he was 13, resulting in him almost losing his life, but he had a traumatic brain injury. It wasn't until much later that he was diagnosed with a brain injury, which affected his short-term memory, which also caused him to be frustrated and sometimes so angry and in a rage. Um, as an adult, I see his struggles differently than I did when I was a kid and afraid of him. Um, but as when I finally came home back to my hometown, um, we talked and we became very close, and we liked to share information. If When my son was diagnosed with bipolar disorder and autism, my father went to the library and also through his book catalogs, literal catalogs that came in the mail, and bought every book he could find on that subject, and gave me the books. He read them, made notes, then gave me the books and his notes, um, because he wanted to have as much information as possible. Uh, and my dad, he would do things until he thought he knew enough about that subject to move on to a new subject. Um, he was when he after he graduated high school, he attended two community colleges at the same time because they didn't have the same um, program that he wanted. So one was for being an electrician, so he could help with his family's business. And also, he was a business manager. Um, and later, he got his associate's degree in psychology because he was trying to figure out what was wrong with him. He couldn't understand it. He didn't know, and no one had told him. Back when he had his surgery, his accident, they didn't have MRIs or CAT scans or whatever. My grandmother said that he had um, he had some personality changes. He was angry a lot, but he did fall in love with my mother and they got married, and they had 5 children. My mother raised us. My dad just kind of was there until he was angry. He did do some things with us as kids, and those stand out the most because um, it was like a major thing if dad did something with us or for us. So we learned to appreciate those moments. My but my dad and I we would swap vinyl records before they became retro and came back and to be a thing. We swapped books and bought books for each other. And uh, the books he always gave me, he knew what kind of subjects that I liked. And he really was into like nonfiction, especially biographies or memoirs or history books about specific people. Me, I always found the lives of first ladies very interesting, presidents over the years, um, what who they were after they left the White House and before they entered the White House. I mean, you kind of can not all information. I mean, since the television and then technology where we see um we know what our president is up to, or at least we think we do. But there were times when we didn't have that information. People didn't have that information. I mean, they created the Electoral College, which and the reason they created it is because they did not think that people were smart enough to understand, um, to have enough knowledge, to make a decision when electing a president. And of course, we only have an electoral college for the president and vice president. We don't have one for governors or mayors or political leaders in our communities. We vote for them and they either win or they don't. Um, but so that was very interesting. Learning things that you thought you already knew, and then also learning things that you never knew. I find it's like I just have this need, this passion inside me to learn things and then share them. And when I was researching my first book, Ballstown, um, it was just, I did so much research and I could just picture myself sitting down with my dad and talking about this type of, maybe getting his input or his knowledge and being able to put it on paper and not using him, but having him to, have these great discussions and learn more based off of stuff that he knew, because I knew he loved history. He collected a lot of things. He loved old maps. And that's kind of why my background is an older map of New York. And it shows the various counties. But I just wanted to, that kind of makes my dad with me. Um, and throughout this, I may, talk more about my father, but I think that um, he could have, my last book, there's no way he would have been able to read it. The book that got published, he was at the point where he was starting to forget how to read. So I sent him a copy, but he may not have known anything about it. He may have looked at the pictures pretended, because for the longest time he tried to pretend that he could still read, but he couldn't. And dementia will just take everything from a person. But the one thing it could never take from my dad was his smile. Because when my dad could smile, when he smiled, he continued to smile. He loved visitors, especially family and grandchildren. And I I miss my dad more than I can even talk about. I miss the time that I am grateful for the time that we had together. I'm grateful for the times when I could visit him, when he was in assisted living and before, and when he was transferred to memory care. I I just I loved those visits. I cherished every visit we had. And then he wasn't dad anymore. Um, in January of 2025 was the last time he knew who I was. And it was only for a brief moment. My sons were with me, but he didn't know who they were. And I wished I could talk to him and know things, um, and share things with him. And I would talk to him and he would nod and smile. And um, I just know that my dad would just, I hope he didn't know what was happening to him. You never know if they do or not. Sometimes they know they're confused. Sometimes they don't know they're confused. When my dad couldn't remember stuff, he had that for pretty much all of his life since the accident. Sometimes he knew he couldn't remember, and he would look for clues and try to pretend that he did, or ask questions. So we didn't think that he couldn't remember. And then there was times where he didn't remember and he didn't know it, and he was confused and he had no idea that he was confused. So I would just take his hand and let him know I would take care of everything for him, and he would just smile and he'd nod his head. And this was way before any other, he had to be in a facility. And he was really good at hiding things. He didn't want people to know that he was suffering, and that he, he didn't want people to know the way he was living. And he was very good at hiding things. But he knew a lot of information when I was homeschooling my children, um, for the last 3 grades of high school. When they had reports or projects they were working on, they would, oh, we have to talk to grandpa because he knows everything. So um and that's what we would do. I would bring him over and they would talk to him, or I would have my dad come over and he would sit and talk to them for hours about their work. And um he wanted to know more about the kind of interest they had so he could um learn about that and have conversations with his grandchildren. This is probably not going to be this. Most of my um, podcasts um, episodes will probably be not much longer than 30 minutes. I hope that I'm hoping I can get some people to come on and be interviewed, especially if they are historians or um, authors that have wrote historical books, whether nonfiction or fiction, and if they um, are um, in or from New York State and their subjects cover things in New York State. I want to limit it to New York State because there is a lot to go through, and also maybe you'll learn some things, and I think I'll learn some things along the way. So thank you for joining me. I will be, as I mentioned before, um, the first and third Sunday of the month. Currently, that will be the schedule. And I want to thank you for joining me on this journey through New York's histories, mysteries, and voices. Every story brings us closer to understanding the place we call home and the people who shaped it. Until next time, keep listening for the echoes and the whispers. I'm Amy Shannon. Be well and be kind. Thank you.